Welcome back to the Eclectic Podcast. This is episode number 12. We hope you all enjoyed that face-melting introduction there from our own Jonathan Crass.
I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you wet your panties a little bit, or your jockeys, whichever
you're wearing. No comment on which I'm wearing. I'll leave that to the imagination. So welcome back. I think maybe to start off with, we should address kind of the last podcast, or maybe it was a couple ago that we did, our patriotic 4th of July podcast. Just in case there were any doubts, it was a gag. It was meant to be satirical, and we're not really bigoted redneck country folk. So, just in case there were any concerns, we're back. We're still the same.
We're just tripping that trip, like we always done before.
It was a joke.
We were just fooling. It's good to be back. We're glad to have you back. And hopefully you will let our voices become intimate and cuddle with your ear holes.
Yeah, we want to penetrate you with our voices. We want you to feel that ethereal penetration coming from our vocal chambers through your ear holes into your brain, and we hope it vibrates and gives you a really warm feeling all over.
Yeah, we want it to vibrate, maybe resonate within you, within your body, within your soul, deeply, deeply, ever so deeply inside you.
Truly, madly, and deeply.
So what are we going to talk about, Josh? What's on the docket today?
So first of all, today, like I was telling you here just a little bit ago, I think something that's been on my mind lately, and probably yours as well, is generation gaps and kind of a detachment from one generation to the next generation, and maybe kind of the social, I don't know, the social results or implications of maybe even kind of social like conflict and frustration between maybe parents and their children or grandparents and their children. Just basically a generation that has had their day in the sun, and maybe they're kind of fading away now, and the next generation is kind of coming online, so to speak, and taking things over and taking the world and society in a new direction, and that inevitably causes some conflict. And I think that would just be a good subject to discuss a little bit, because I think we all experience it to one extent or another.
Yeah, it's one of the problems we've talked about facing modern society in its evolutionary process, I believe. Because when we get down to it, these prior generations, our parents, our elders, they're really good at giving advice, whether it's warranted or not, whether we ask for it or not. And there's a level of expectation where we are supposed to just accept it. And I notice it a lot in my own life and in my friends' lives. The natural reaction for me is to question it. And if through further questioning it seems like a good idea, then maybe I will adopt it into my own ideas about the world and philosophies and whatever. But if not, I'm not gonna buy it just because somebody older told me to,
Yeah.
Because, and that's the thing. There's either the resistance to this, or some younger folks just accept everything at face value, everything they're told, and at that point it becomes indoctrination and conditioning. and it becomes destructive to the evolutionary process.
Yeah, and if there's one thing that we can learn from history, it's that previous generations have latched on to ideas that today we know to be totally corrupt and abhorrent. We've gone into a lot of examples of this before: slavery, witch burning, scientific conceptions about reality, the earth revolves, or the sun revolving around the earth.
Yeah.
The earth is flat, things like that. I mean, and those are extreme examples, but they illustrate how over time and through evolution, through one generation letting go of a previous generation's preconceptions about the world, that's how evolution occurs socially.
Yeah.
And so I think it's clearly in the best interest of the human race to question everything from the generation that's basically handing the reins over to the planet. And there's always going to be good things that you can take with you and that should be carried on. And there are also examples of people that stand all throughout history. There have been individuals that stand outside of outside of time in a way. There were people that were calling this issue for what it was, in ancient times. There were Greek philosophers, all through the Enlightenment period, and in Galileo and Copernicus, and all the scientists that a few hundred years ago. I mean, there are people that can see it for what it is in their own time, regardless of what generation they happen to be stuck in the middle of. But for the most part, like we're saying, it's just kind of a parental or grandparent type of thing, where maybe they're not going to be comfortable with the way you look at the world because it's not the same way they do.
Yeah.
And then they'll get all worried, and maybe they'll get butthurt that you're not going to carry on those same outlooks.
Uh-huh.
And that it inevitably it does cause conflict between parents and children, or whatnot.
Mentors and younger people.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't have to be parents and children, but like you said, most often it is. And there are those instances throughout the course of human history, dating back to ancient times and probably beyond, written language and all that stuff. It's not a widely accepted viewpoint at the time. I'd venture to say it never is. I mean, we're still kind of fighting that battle today.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are those enlightened people who come along. These, I tend to think of them as like transcendental beings that have tapped into something else.
Yeah.
Something other.
And that other, that is the truth, is what they've tapped into.
Yeah, the grand universal truth. But yeah, I've had a couple instances of this very recently. One of them I already discussed with you. The other one I haven't yet, but I will go ahead and divulge them now.
Please
for
do.
You and the listener.
Please do.
I was talking with this person the other day, and we got on the subject of religion. And, I don't know what I believe, and I think that's one of my greatest strengths in my spiritual journey, is that I'm not one of those people who's walking around with their eyes wide shut, and I'm willing to look at other people's viewpoints and relate with them without getting all up in arms because they don't see things the way I do.
Mm-hmm.
Because who the fuck am I? What do I know?
Yeah.
Anyway, we got on the subject of religion, and I kind of divulged to this person that I don't align with any religious institution anymore, that I might not call myself a Christian anymore. And they looked as though I had struck them in the face, and they weren't listening to any of what I was saying. They were constructing straw man arguments out of thin air, things that I wasn't saying. They were conjuring up and attacking it to better their argument, and it wasn't even things I was saying. I said, yes, I believe that Christ was a real man, and I believe that there is a God out there. I don't know what to call him or her or it, but I believe Christ had some divine qualities and was of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I also see all the horrific things carried out in religion's name, and the exclusivity, something I have a real problem with. there's just a lot of things I have a problem with religion, so I don't know what I would call myself anymore. And this person started attacking Buddhism, which I said nothing about Buddhism anyway. And they're like, Buddha is not God. And that was their main argument. They kept repeating that. And I was like, well, first off, I never said that. Secondly, Buddha himself never said that. He never claimed to be a god. He didn't want to be remembered as a god. You know, maybe it'd be best to learn about other people's religions before you start ripping on them, so you don't come off like a complete idiot.
Yeah.
But anyway, there was that. And then last night, I was having a discussion with a couple people who are close to me about school.
Uh-huh.
And prospective majors.
Okay.
And I was talking about what I want to do. And I've been leaning towards philosophy, things that are passions of mine. Because you only get one shot at life. I don't want to be going to a field with the mindset, oh, this is the best I can do, I gotta make some money.
Yeah.
No, fuck that. I
leads
can't take
nowhere.
any of it with me. I want to do what I want to do while I'm here, right?
Yeah. What is your passion? What you're truly interested in? That's the only way to get fulfillment.
Well, yeah, but I came face to face with this issue again, and these people were bashing on that and saying, you know, you got to look into what fields are booming right now and what you're gonna get a job in and all this stuff, and I'm just like, no, it's not your life. I don't want your life.
Yeah.
It's my life.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
They're like, I hear things like philosophy, and it just makes me wonder. Like, well, wonder away, you know?
That's the point of philosophy, is to wonder away.
Yeah.
I've been confronted with that same issue a lot recently too, and I think that does really tie into the generational gap thing, because I think for some people it's hard for them to either see or to acknowledge that you don't want their life. They think that that it's just a foregone conclusion that you want the exact same things in life.
Yeah.
That you want, again, and we've touched on this before, but, you know, having that house and having that truck and having those kids, you know,
and pets.
Yeah, and getting to work on time, and then getting Junior off to, you know, baseball practice and picking him up, you know, and it's just like that. I think that they fail to see what a like rigid structure that is, that fits only within our current time, and they're not looking at time in a full way. They're not seeing the grand scope of what life can be, and you know, and trying to live in a way kind of outside of time, like we were saying, that, you know, you're trying to do something that you're interested in, so you're not looking forward to those 2 weeks of vacation every year, because your whole life should be a vacation. You get this gift of being alive, you know, on this amazing planet, and you shouldn't be sacrificing 50 weeks of the year so you can be happy on 2 of them, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, that's the real crux
Just kill
of the
me
issue
now
to me.
if that's what I'm destined for.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm avoiding that at all costs, whatever that means.
Yeah.
And I think it's part of the generational attitude that, you know, it's people get so tied down into ways that they were raised and social customs that they follow, that to live any other way is just, it's almost bewildering. It's not even so much just a debatable conflict for them. It's something that they're truly baffled by.
It's just unfathomable.
They're
don't get it.
They're boggled by it.
Yeah.
Like, they just fully don't understand it.
Yep. And like, I kind of want to rewind a bit, like, you know, when we were talking about the house and the kids and the truck and all that.
Yeah, the American dream, right?
That's all well and good, whatever, if that's what some people
if that
want.
brings happiness.
Yeah, exactly. And for me, I would want those things someday, but I want it to fit in to my life and my dreams and my goals, not what other people want for my life.
On your terms.
Yeah, exactly, on my terms. I think a lot of times these older people who are given this kind of advice, which, if you ask me, it's bad advice. It's bad advice.
Yeah, if we try to keep an open mind here, but if we're going to be objective, it isn't bad.
It's not advice for a happy life.
No.
It's advice for perpetuating the
It's
broken
good. Yeah,
cycle.
it's good advice if you want to perpetuate that exact system of living that they live in.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's bad advice.
And I think a lot of times those people who are giving this advice have kind of lost touch through sacrificing themselves for work and for their kids and for whatever else. They've lost touch with what it used to be like for them when they were our age, and they had dreams and desires that were beyond that.
Yeah.
They've kind of just bought in fully, and they don't. It doesn't jive with them anymore. They don't get it.
Yeah, exactly.
When maybe they used to.
They've let go of. They've let go of that kind of that inner voice that I think all of us kind of start out with in life.
Yeah.
And they've made one compromise here, one compromise later, and it after a while, there's such a confluence of compromises that you've made in your life that you can no longer look back at those dreams and relate to them anymore.
Yeah.
Because they're not you yet. They haven't lived. They haven't lived that way. They've lived in a coma for about 20 years.
They get to a point where they see their reflection in the mirror and don't even know who the fuck they are anymore.
Yeah, and I don't think identity is something that you're gonna truly get from your bank statements or your pay
Place
stubs.
Of work.
Yeah, like those type of things. That's not your true identity. Even though it's easier to think that way sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a tough issue, especially when it's people that are close to you. But it's important to take a stand against that indoctrination.
Yeah.
Because again, what they're failing to realize is that this is how society and humanity evolves. We'd still be in prehistoric caveman times if there wasn't a generation that let go of the previous generation's fucking misconceptions.
Yep.
And it continues, and it's going to continue, and it's going to be the same for generations that follow us. And I think you just have to embrace that, and it's so amazing, it's so wonderful. Embrace it,
Yeah. Most of the time, when I'm in these conversations, they tend to devolve into almost borderline bitter arguments. So I just say what I have to say to appease them at the time, but I don't buy it. I lock that part of myself away where I'm like, okay, I'm not letting this go. This is me. I'm going to do this someday.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell them what I have to tell them to get them off my back, but fuck what they're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. And it doesn't, it's like religion, schooling, careers, jobs. That's all one aspect of it. A lot of it also is that I wanted to bring up is
it's multifaceted. It's not just those two things.
Yeah, these are the individual sides of it, but there's the same thing applies to society as a whole.
Yeah.
And government and the way that our entire country is the direction that it's going in, and clinging to relics of the past and not moving on. Outdated and bigoted mindsets, and I was going to point out that one of the great founding fathers, perhaps my favorite of those guys from back in the late 18th century that basically had a hand in the American Revolution and starting this country with all that hope that it was going to be different than every country before it.
Yeah.
And his name was Thomas Paine. Thomas Paine, I think he was born in England. I think he was actually English, but he ran into conflict there. I think he lived in France for a while, and he stirred up some controversy there. Was going to get the guillotine, but I think
he was the one who had a very basic education, right? And he struck up a friendship with Ben Franklin, I believe it was.
Yeah, exactly. He was friends. I think James Monroe too was like. I think James Monroe was the one that got him off the hook in France and then brought him back to America, where he really settled in. Okay. Struck up a friendship with Benjamin Franklin, and then really kind of got into the writing revolutionary materials that sold hundreds of thousands of copies.
Which back then was quite a feat.
It was off the charts. And the quote, there's a quote here that I want to read from him that I think really strikes at the core of how it is the responsibility of one generation to reevaluate the world they inherit from the previous generation and continue to evolve and not just accept everything as a given in their lives. And this isn't really so much individual. I think he's talking, it more pertains to our entire country, and entire society as a whole. But this is from The Rights of Man, which is a work he wrote, I think, back in the I don't know, I want to say like 1790s, somewhere around there, if that's not completely accurate. But so here's the quote, and I'll let you chime in on it after I read it, but I think it's really pertinent to what we're talking about. It goes, there never did, there never will, and there never can exist a parliament or any description of men, or any generation of men in any country possessed of the right or the power of binding and controlling posterity to the end of time. And then it goes on. Every age and generation must be as free to act for itself in all cases as the ages and generations which preceded it. The vanity and presumption of governing beyond the grave is the most ridiculous and insolent of all tyrannies. Man has no property in man, neither has any generation a property in the generations which are to follow. And I think that really just nails it on the head.
Yeah.
And that's a founding father. This was, 200 odd years ago. And this is obviously one of the guys that stood outside of time and could analyze this from an objective standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, couldn't have said it better myself. That's beautiful literature.
Yeah.
And it kind of seems to suggest to me what he's saying is that if given long enough, any governing body will either become corrupt or obsolete after X amount of time.
Yeah.
And it's the responsibility of every generation to evaluate, are we free to act? And if the answer is no, which I believe it is, then it's time to take action. Then the time to take action has passed.
Yeah, it's yeah, exactly. It's he's pointing out how ridiculous it is for one generation in government. Again, this can apply to an individual basis, but how it's just ridiculous and tyrannical for one generation to have the presumption that they're going to dictate how the next generations are going to act and behave and live their lives.
Yeah.
They're going to die, and then they're still trying to govern from beyond the grave, like he said. And that's it's true in a lot of different facets of life today. But I think that it's just it's encouraging to me that this is Thomas Paine, speaking to us from 200 some years ago, and he got it. People get it.
Yeah.
People understand this. Some people understand
this. But those
this.
people are more often than not, especially this day and age, and all throughout history, are outcasts.
Yeah, well, exactly. And you know what? Most people that even would know Thomas Paine and know about Plato and all these other guys, they're probably the people that are today the outcasts, that aren't, the people that are doing well in common, terms in society. They're, they probably don't give a shit about history or anything like that. What can they learn from that, you know?
Yeah. Or they might know the words, but they don't know what it means, you know?
Yeah.
They might know the people and the dates and the words, but they don't evaluate it deeply enough. And again, that's a generalization and a blanket statement.
Yeah.
But I think it's, for the most part, true.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that just, you know, it's incumbent upon us to, I guess, it's incumbent upon us to take the shit that we're inevitably going to get from other people. They're trying to direct us to live in a certain way and to try to think inside the box as opposed to thinking outside the box about how we're going to live our life. But, you know, it's our burden to bear. You know, it's like, it is what it is, and it's like...
It's our cross.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? We can either just relent and integrate into the shit, or we can just be like, whatever, I'm gonna keep evolving.
Yep. And I think that's the proper path. It's not easy, but then again, things worthwhile in life are rarely easy. And it brings to mind a quote from the Bible. What is right is not always popular. What is popular is not always right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would venture to say rarely is those two aligning. I think it's interesting, that part about governing beyond the grave. Kind of brings to mind what the American Congress did with the Federal Reserve, and essentially selling all the futures of American generations to come into slavery.
Yeah.
I mean, that's essentially what they did.
Yeah. Yeah, Woodrow Wilson, 1913. Woodrow Wilson, don't get me started on that.
100 years ago.
Pig fucker. Dude, yeah, exactly. 100 years ago, wow. I didn't even think of that.
We are the generation that is reaping the shit from that.
Yeah.
You know, Social Security, Federal Reserve, all that stuff is coming back to bite us in the ass.
Yeah, and it's, you know, it's so convoluted and complicated. Like I totally appreciate the idea of Social Security, and
but we're not ever going to get a dime of that.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And it's been done wrong, and it's been clearly it was you know, countless corrupt aspects of it that, you know, aren't known very well.
There were some sinister elements at play,
as there always is, and it's so, I mean, it's so convoluted, and there's a million other things, and there's all this legislation that has been passed, and the wars, and again, the military-industrial complex that plays into everything in this country.
Yep.
And it's just a fucking mess. But you know, yeah, you know, that's one example, but one of many. Yeah, it's clearly that evolution, again, like you said, which is very fucking pertinent here, it's not easy, and there always are those chains that you have to break, you know, that you have to break individually as your life personally, you have to break, and that we all have to break as a society.
Yeah.
And it's never going to be easy. It's never going to be simple, but it's definitely worthwhile, you know.
Certainly. Let's take a quick break here.
Alrighty. So, you know, like we were talking though about how maybe a lot of people kind of buy into the indoctrination that they were subject to growing up, you know, the way they were raised, and they just kind of buy into everything and don't really question anything. And again, if that brings you happiness, whatever, I mean, I'm no one to judge what brings another person happiness.
Yeah.
But from the individual side of this, you know, there is a lot wrong with society today, and there's a quote from it's a Krishnamurti quote. He's a philosopher, Indian philosopher in the 20th century, one of my favorite quotes of all time, and he said that it is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. And I think that is, like we were saying about how people seem to be doing better, and, you know, like common understanding of you know, a good life or a happy life or whatever, a career and a job and a couple of kids and and paying your bills on time and all that, just the whole the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's that is the measure of health today. And if you choose to live your life in a different way, you're deemed to be living in an unhealthy way, metaphorically. And I think that quote just really just nails it, because it's like, it is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a sick society.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you're well adjusted maybe, and I'm maladjusted to this society, but it's a sick society all the same. So
it doesn't change the reality.
Yeah, it doesn't change the fucking true nature of what we're fucking really doing here,
Mm-hmm.
what we're really doing with our time.
It's kind of brings to mind something we were talking about a few podcasts back. I don't remember which episode it was, but it's kind of irrelevant, I suppose.
Yeah.
We were talking about the effect of fear and everything, and we were talking about how back in our early human ancestors' day, the fear was a lot more of a in-your-face thing, like, oh, this predator is gonna rip my face off, or whatever. And now, in the modern age, it's fear kind of manifests itself in a different way, through stress, I feel like.
Yeah.
And in a more literal sense, tying into that quote, it is no measure of health to be well-adjusted to a sick society. Most people that are well-adjusted to this society have incredible levels of stress. In fact, that's what most doctors attribute most of our biggest health problems as Americans to, is our high-stress, high-paced, fast-paced lifestyle.
Yeah, and just look at the millions and millions and millions of prescriptions for antidepressants in our country.
Yeah. But yeah, I just think that's another interesting way to look at that quote there.
Yeah.
It's just, it's not good for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's not good for you.
Just,
if it truly brings you happiness, your job and your kids and whatever, more power to you. That's great. I'm happy for you. But I would venture to say most people,
it's really not bringing them
it's
happiness.
not good for them.
Yeah, I don't think it. I think that they might say that it brings happiness, but it really doesn't if they take an honest look at themselves,
Yeah, most people say that because that's what you're supposed to say.
Yeah, husband,
We don't talk about our problems.
Yeah, exactly. And it's to keep up a certain veneer, to the neighbors or whoever.
This vain fucking image that we want to project to everybody.
Yeah, how many, like...
Oh, I've got it all together.
Yeah, everything's fine here.
Yeah.
Nothing to see.
When most times, nothing could be further from the truth.
Yeah, like, I just get this picture in my head of, like, an alcoholic husband and a wife on antidepressants,
And the kids being just kind of cast aside to fend for themselves.
Yeah, or indoctrinated into the same bullshit, and the parents don't stop and think, well, do I really want my kids to, okay, they're going to get the career, and they're going to get the house, and they're going to have the kids of their own, but are they going to be alcoholics? Are they going to be prescribed antidepressants too?
Yeah.
Like, they don't realize that the shit that their indoctrination is, the constructs of a sick society.
They don't realize the implications, and most times I think parents have the best intentions, but they don't really take the time, kind of act on impulse in rearing their children, and don't really take the time to evaluate what type of possibly profound effect this might have on the rest of their life.
Yeah, exactly, and I think that it, honestly, I have to say, like, and this is a little bit judgmental, but I think you failed as a parent the day that you decide that you want your kids to live the same life that you have.
Yeah.
If you want the same life for your kids as the life you're living, then you've ceased to dream for them an evolved and progressed life. And isn't that the point? To throw them up on that next rung of the ladder and keep it going, and their grandkids to be up even higher and closer to the utopia that we all want.
Till we get to that pinnacle, that ever elusive pinnacle.
So yeah, like, I don't think people should be steering their children to live life in the same direction that they live.
It's kind of something an observation I have from parenting in general is that a lot of times parents tend to take their own faults and project them onto their children in a way.
Yeah, certainly. And maybe subsequent to that, they'll start trying to live vicariously through their children and correct the faults that they see in themselves, subconsciously probably, trying to correct those faults through their children in a way.
Yeah.
You know, which
and
is
not really realizing that they're not dead yet.
Yeah.
They still have time to change them themselves.
Absolutely. If you've got 5 minutes left to live, I think that you can. That's plenty of time to radically change who you are. You know. Like
yes, there are two paths you can go back, but in the long run, there's still time to change the road you're on.
Oh man.
Great, probably the greatest fucking song ever.
Probably masterpiece. What
I get
wisdom.
a chubby every time.
Oh.
The music, the
yeah.
lyrics, everything.
Yeah.
Half-mast.
Yeah. And it's no Justin Bieber or, Kenny Chesney or whatever's popular now, but, it was good for its time.
Yeah.
It was good for its time.
It had its day in the sun, but now we got the Bieblers and,
Yeah.
I can't even think of any other. I can't even pretend to be hip with the music scene now.
I try to make a funny joke and I'm just like fucking stuck on Bieber. That's all I really know. Whatever these kids listen to today.
Drake. It's like the only other one I can name drop. Rihanna,
yeah.
Diorama. Alright, I digress.
All right.
We're getting off track.
Alright, so yeah, I mean, maybe we can kind of wrap this topic up, but do you have any, just kind of closing maybe message for the listener about the dangers of indoctrination, generationally speaking?
Well, and we touched on it earlier. It seems to be that most times this indoctrination seems to manifest itself from parents through to children. So I guess I will just address that. Parenting is no easy task. I don't know from experience. I have no children, but I thank God for that because those children would have a tough go at it. Let's just say that. If I had kids right now, but I can imagine how tough it would be, and it is the parents' responsibility to kind of try and teach their kids and steer them in the right direction. But I also think an even greater responsibility is for the parent to evaluate, is this the right thing to tell my child, and evaluate the reasons why they are telling them certain things, and find out if it's a sound reason, if it's something that they should really be teaching.
Absolutely. I guess I'll just add that I think that it's important for people to discover who they are and go on their own spiritual journey, whatever that may be for them, but figure out who they are and what they really believe about this life and this world before you, ideally before you have children, or at least before you start trying to inculcate certain outlooks in your children about the way they should live their lives. I think that you have to do work on yourself first before you can maturely and responsibly direct your children in a direction.
Yeah.
In any direction.
Before you can start inundating and perpetuating these ideas and concepts to the next generation. It's just it's dangerous if not done right.
Yes.
But I think we've pretty well covered that topic.
Well, rewinding a bit to when we were talking about religion a little bit earlier, and again we have touched on this previously, but An interesting concept, or kind of an idea that sprung to my mind the other day, was some of the people that are the most ingrained in organized religion today, some of the most vocal people that they're really involved in organized church.
Advocates, so to speak.
Yeah, advocates, kind of that whole evangelical attitude. I think that a lot of the time they're gonna pose like they know for certainty, for fact, 100% that what they believe is the truth, Yep. And they're really gonna like try to hammer that home to you that, well, I know that, let's use, in our situation, obviously, it would be like local Christian churches, mainstream Christianity. They're gonna they know that, the Bible is 100% literal truth, and, blah, 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 but I have a problem with them saying that it's knowledge, with them saying that they know it, because isn't a big tenet of Christianity faith, right? Do you have faith in Christ? Ask any of these Christians.
Faith
ask
the
them.
size of a mustard seed can move a mountain.
Yeah.
According to Christ.
Faith, right? Faith, not knowledge.
Yeah.
Now, if you have faith in Christ, I think the definition of faith is something that you believe without conclusive empirical proof.
Yeah, something that you believe that you don't have proof and most likely will never have proof.
Yeah, it's like a spiritual belief that's not tangible in the empirical scientific world, right?
Yeah.
So now, the term faith, that's in direct contradiction to the concept of knowledge. And I just find it ironic and kind of funny and sad in a way that a lot of these mainstream organized Christian churches and their adherents will profess that they have all this faith in Christ or whatever, but yet they will also say that they have knowledge that it is the truth and they know it.
Yeah.
Because if you have faith, and you can't have faith and knowledge about the same subject 100%. You can't. I mean, it's a contradiction. It's an oxymoron. Faith and knowledge are two conflicting terms, and so I just think that maybe that's something that they don't get confronted with very often. If someone were to say that to them, I don't think they'd have a substantive answer to that. I think that they'd probably give you the deer in the headlights look.
Well, yeah, either that or they would conjure up something that they'd construct straw man arguments and,
as they're prone to do.
Yeah, divert away from the real question, which at a base level, let's just look at it from this. They know beyond a shadow of a doubt, which implies to me that they were there to see it.
Yeah.
Which the New Testament was all written 2,000 years ago. The Old Testament goes way, way beyond that.
Yeah.
So they must be pretty fucking old.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah. You know this?
Or time travelers.
So you were there?
Mm-hmm.
You saw Christ walking around?
Mm-hmm.
I would venture to say that you would probably be living your life a lot differently if that were true.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be wasting your time with this rudimentary schoolyard bullshit, trying to bully me into buying your concept of belief.
Yeah.
And also, you must be pretty fucking old. You're a modern marvel of science.
Yeah.
Which kind of brings us back to the thing we were talking about with philosophy a few podcasts ago, like what can we know? What do we know? What can we know?
How do we know
that.
it? Yeah.
Yeah. And faith and knowledge have to be two separate things. And I'm not ripping on anybody's beliefs, because I definitely think through reading Christ's work and Sermon on the Mount by Emmett Fox, who was a great Christian man, but more than most Christians, I think he got it. He had it all together.
Yeah.
He knew what he was talking about. Christ did have some divine qualities. I believe that. But I also believe there's a lot of convoluted bullshit that goes on. That if Christ were here to see it, some of these things that people get caught up on and just kind of banging their head against the wall, you'd say, shame on you for focusing on these ancillary, cursory bullshits when we should be... His main message was love and acceptance and truth.
Yeah. People since he died or left the earth, whatever, all throughout history, people have twisted his words and formed it into this organized political movement, basically, for their own power and their own social standing.
Yep.
And it's continued up until this day. And it's sad, but it's like they don't. A lot of Christians today, they just don't. They don't. Like you've said before, they don't know the book that they're preaching.
Yep. They know the words, they know the people and the places and the times, but they don't know what it means.
Yeah, the most important thing.
That's the most important part. Certainly, and it's something that is often cast aside in favor of the comforts of knowing.
Yeah.
When really, you don't know shit. I'm just going to go on the record and say that.
Yeah.
You don't know. The faith is more important, and that's great if you have faith. Good for you. More power to you. But don't say you know when you don't.
Yeah. Because if you know, then you don't have any faith.
Mm-hmm.
And what good is a Christian without faith? So, I think this and what we were talking about before, these both kind of are examples of the dangers of like a herd mindset. How there's just danger for your own individual life and danger for society when people basically are sheep and they just go along with the group, whatever group that is community that they've been raised in, or whatever group it is that they're associated with, when they don't think for themselves and they just go along with the group. Okay? And I think probably the most stark example of this was Nazi Germany. And the most interesting part of that whole period in history to me is how a relatively small group of people, the Nazi Party and Hitler, were able to con an entire nation of millions of people into complicity with the horrendous acts that they fucking committed, after they had this groundswell of support from the people and they were popular. And I think that maybe we could learn a lot about ourselves in modern day America with all this nationalism and patriotism, and like how you're made out to be a fucking pariah if you don't fall in with all of that shit. I think we can learn a lot about ourselves if we look back at Germany, like in the 30s, and what it was necessarily that allowed Hitler and the Nazis to rise up into power and gain the support of millions of average people that were all going along with the group, that were all going along with their community and the expected line of thinking that they, were supposed to have.
Yep. It certainly illustrates the dangers of this kind of indoctrination that we've been talking about. You see it in Nazi Germany with the horrific war crimes that were carried out. You see it in a lesser sense today, and I'm not saying lesser because it's less present, but because the media is so controlled and we don't see much of the big picture, the full story. But it's still going on. It's been going on throughout the course of human history. It's also present in religious institution, people taking pride in their certain choice of religion and kind of looking down on other religions, maybe subconsciously, not realizing it, but being so sure that they know the truth and everyone else is going to hell because they don't accept their God. Yeah. It's what it is ignorant pride, which is one of the 7 deadly sins. Pride is not good. It's of the devil, whether it's nationalistic shit, religious shit,
or even about your career.
Yeah, exactly. All of that. It's dust in the wind. It's but shitty, filthy diarrhea rags before the eyes of God.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. There's trouble brewing, it seems like, with the way our modern governments have all this nationalistic pride. It seems like there's a conflict brewing.
So yeah, I just would like to point out that, again, tying back a little bit to the Nazi Germany example, just because I think that just really illustrates the dangers of people just going along with the group, whatever that may be. How did Hitler convince all these people to go along with what he was preaching, basically, to his social structure? And this example can be used today in modern America, but it's just an example. So I'm not saying it's the exact same thing. Of course it's not. But Hitler, I think a big part of it was, this is my kind of reflection on it, but I think that he made a lot of promises, and he provided comfortable explanations for a lot of people's problems and their unhappiness, especially they were going through a depression, and pretty destitute times. What Hitler did was gave them a comfortable out. He gave them this reassuring, comfortable feeling that, and of course there was all the nationalism and patriotism. This is our country. These are my people. We have honor in this country, and he glorified that pride in their country.
Yeah.
Which, do we see any of that today in America?
Oh, heavens no.
But and I think this is again something that applies to an entire society, and also applies to an individual. Even ties into their religion, like we were just talking about, in that people want to have a comfortable excuses, and they want to have comfort in their line of thinking. Why are a lot of people so steadfast in their knowledge or belief in whatever their organized church and organized religion spouts? Because it's comfortable for them. They want that comfortable feeling of, it's alright, just gotta live by this book, and, I'm gonna live in the afterlife with Jesus, I'm gonna see all my dead relatives, and my family, it's all gonna be reunited, and it's paradise, blah, blah, blah. Well, I think, for one thing, promises of, a better tomorrow and all this stuff kind of mitigates people's disposition to make that happen today and make today paradise, But it's that comfortable feeling that they want. They're just so comfortable with the setting that they were raised in, and just whether or not it's bigoted or wrong or outdated or clearly doing damage to a lot of people, doing damage to people's lives. If it's just comfortable for them, if it's just this comfortable, haze that they can live their life in, then they're gonna go along with it. They're gonna be, fully on board with it. They're gonna, because they get enmeshed with the group, and that's what Hitler did with the German people back in the 30s, was give them these, comfortable explanations and blame the Jews and other groups of people for all the problems that they had in their own lives, in their own, the depression. He blamed it on other groups of people, and it, it really, I think that was that's just a prototypical example of a herd mindset, of people acting as herd animals, basically. And, it illustrates how, I think, dangerous it is for anyone to be concerned with fitting in rather than standing out. Because they didn't want to stand out at that time specifically. Yeah. And people still don't want to stand out in modern America. They don't want to stand out and be truly individuals and think for themselves. they want to fit in with the group, and they want to know that they're not going to be outcast by people in their community for their beliefs or the way they're living their life. They want to fit in with the group, and they want to go full charge. This is us. This is our country. These are our people, and it's too comfortable for them to rethink their fucking situation.
Yeah. And kind of back to what you said about people wanting to fit in rather than stand out.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of the purpose of life from a spiritual standpoint, is to stand out.
Yeah.
Because
absolutely,
if the afterlife is true and all this stuff, once we ascend to that oneness, that collective conscious, that, the self-mind, or however you want to call it, to heaven or whatever, where we're all one with God and God is with us and everything, then this is our license, this is our chance to be individuals.
Yeah.
That's the purpose of life.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing I found interesting that you said is, in gaining support and all this stuff, a big mechanism that Hitler used was blaming other groups of people. I think that at a very base level of the human psyche, it's always more comfortable to be able to project whatever we find undesirable about our life onto something outside of ourselves. To be able to blame these hardships and these problems on something else rather than looking at
some external tormentor.
Mm-hmm. I think that's just a kind of a fault of the human psyche, is that rather than looking at maybe the hand that we've played in getting to the point where we're at, it's just so much more easier to say, oh, it's their fault. It's because of this.
Yeah, blaming other people for whatever malady that you're currently dealing with.
Yeah, and it's kind of an extreme example, but also a relevant one with Nazi Germany and stuff. It illustrates the danger of that kind of mindset.
Yeah.
When fully manifested.
Mm-hmm. And particularly today in America, because this patriotism and nationalism shit is getting out of control. Mm-hmm. And you cannot start a rational debate with a lot of people, because they're gonna just immediately label you, a hater of America.
Yeah.
Or
a domestic terrorist.
Yeah, and it's so fucking ridiculous, because and I think that's how that nationalism and patriotism, they play, like the government and the military in particular, they play on that swell of support and that group mindset in order to recruit people for the military, to be pawns to go over and do the bidding of these corporations and this military-industrial complex that dominates the real American geopolitical landscape.
Yeah.
And
the world.
Mm-hmm.
Really.
Well, yeah, absolutely, because we are the global government, basically.
We are the lone global power. For now.
Yeah. Well, it's not going to last if we keep on with this attitude, this hubris that we have as Americans, and I'd like to maybe make a parallel here between. And I've said this before, that I think that it is up to the individual, and I think that people, before enlisting in the military, need to again do work on themselves and figure out what they really believe and what their true convictions are, and have a spiritual evolution. Because as soon as you enlist, then you're a pawn and you're gonna get indoctrinated, and you're gonna be made into be a number, not even a person. They're gonna take away your individuality. They want uniformity, and the perks of that a lot of people go into it for, I think, are they're gonna be glorified as heroes, because there's God knows every fucking other day on TV, you see those commercials, God bless the troops and support them because they're protecting our freedoms. well, it's not the case. They're not protecting freedoms over in the Middle East. It's a corporate excursion for political ends.
That's all it is.
Yeah, but they,
for political and financial gains.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, money, but it's like there's this reward system in place where they know they're going to get this glorification. They know they're going to be renowned and have this certain level of respect when they get home. That they're more honorable than the next guy because they serve their country or whatever. And it's not much different in my eyes than in third world countries where you have these like suicide bombers and all these like fanatics, radical Islam and shit.
Yeah.
Where why do they join up to go be suicide bombers and fight America, American occupation in other countries? It's because, of course religion plays a part too, but it's mainly, I think, it's because of the glorification that they'll bring to their name and to their families. I've read that most of their families get taken care of. Whatever organization, they'll, take care of their families after they go blow themselves up, and if they go off to fight American occupation, it's the same thing. They have a reward system that's in place where they're going to be glorified as heroes and go down as martyrs or whatever. It's the same thing that occurs in America with people enlisting in the military. It's the same mindset. There's this reward system of glorification that I think they seek. That it's a terrible fault in the human psyche that we're still dealing with today, that we've dealt with all throughout history.
Yeah, and another parallel that I think could be drawn here with the Nazi Germany part, kind of rewinding a little bit, is back then Hitler, in order to gain the public support, projected the blame on other entities such as rival governments, the Jews, so to speak.
Yeah.
And etc. and so forth. Nowadays, to justify the American conquest of
good word.
These developing nations is the war on terror. It's some conjured external tormentor.
Yeah.
If we weren't over there raping their land and pillaging and killing all of their civilians, they wouldn't have anything to be pissed off about.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. And the media likes to portray it that they hate our freedom or some shit. Like that's a bold-faced lie.
Yeah. If you ever go to a foreign country, most people don't give a fucking shit that you're an American.
Yeah.
One way or the other. It's because of our actions that 9/11 and any perceived terrorist threat has ever happened, and that was a ingenious plot drawn up by the American geopolitical structure to justify our military presence in these developing worlds, or developing countries that are rich in resources of interest.
Yeah, and just to illustrate that, like in the Middle East is a specific example of maybe why they don't like us, why they hate us or whatever. It's not anything to do with 9/11. That was, a result of this foreign policy we've had for a long time.
We've been building up to that boiling point for a lot longer than people realize.
Yeah, we've been involved in raping the Middle East for a long time. Like, I'm sure it goes back, and here's a few examples I'd like to list here. And it goes way, way beyond this. These are just a few cursory examples. But in the early 1930s, oil was discovered in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and some other countries over there. And so, America gets involved over there. We want that oil. It was later called, I think in Iraq and places over there, American officials in the 40s called it one of the greatest material prizes in world history, obviously for financial and political reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So we were over there, in 1947, the United States forces a UN resolution that, it cut up Palestine for Israel and carved out, the native peoples of Palestine and injected all these basically foreigners into their country. That was after World War II. And, caused the mass relocation of a lot of people that, they were set there and they had families, and we're still today in Israel, we're just ushering them from place to place and moving them to the periphery more and more, and marginalizing them and their political interests, and their well-being as fucking people.
Yeah.
In 1949, CIA overthrew the elected Syrian government and established a military dictatorship. 1953 was a big one when the CIA overthrew the Mossadegh government in Iran when he tried to nationalize for the Iranians all the oil fields, which of course could not be allowed with American and British oil interests there. Or we could even go back more modern, more close recently times is like I know that when the Soviets invaded Afghanistan in the 70s, we were training, supporting, throwing a lot of money at the Mujahideen and training them to fight the Soviets in kind of a proxy war. And, who was involved with that? It was Bin Laden and all those guys and, the precursor to Al-Qaeda and all that shit. And we're funding them and training them and giving them weapons. And, the Cold War ends. And then we become the enemy because we're over there still. And, it's so ironic that, there's pictures of there's pictures of Rumsfeld in Iraq with Saddam Hussein. There's pictures of fucking Brzezinski shaking hands with Osama bin Laden, like in the late 70s. Like, that, it's all our doing. It's all American foreign policy that's coming back to bite us with this. And it's never an option that you don't hear from either of the two mainstream parties that maybe we should just get the fuck out of their countries and leave them alone to build their own lives.
Yeah.
No, it's never an option that you hear in the mainstream media. It's like we have to have control over there.
Which to a rational person would probably be the first thought.
Yeah, well, to a rational person, but
Yeah.
we're not dealing with rational people for the most part.
No. And like you illustrated there, it goes back a lot farther than most people would realize, and those were just a few examples. It goes back further than that. And there's also the more recent examples that people are familiar with the first Bush administration and the involvement in Iraq with Saddam Hussein and all that stuff, and his subsequent overthrow when he became a rogue and no longer would answer to
The American beck and call.
to our demands. And I say our loosely, I mean the American political structure and their policies. It's just it's disgusting.
Well, yeah. Yeah, it,
When really evaluated and looked at a face value for what it really is, it's abhorrent.
absolutely abhorrent, and that's, but that's the way that foreign policy issues are framed when presented to the public, through the mainstream media. Like other nations, like specifically third world countries, if they're termed a democracy by the American government and the mainstream media, that doesn't mean that they're a true democracy or that their people are free and have liberty. Democracy, any nation that's described as a democracy today by the American government, that generally will refer to the countries that are the most malleable governments for American corporations to come in and trade and use up their resources, and they're being sold to the United States at prices that we deem desirable.
Acceptable.
Yeah. So most, they're the countries that are the most cooperative with American commercial interests, and so they're painted to the American public as allies that are the most free, liberty-loving governments. When in reality, time and time again throughout history, throughout the last 20th century, we'll actively put in place governments that are military dictatorships and that oppress their people, and be fully on board with them as long as they acquiesce to American corporate demands, and they'll they're malleable to American government instructions, basically, and a lot of the countries that we deem as enemies and dictators, well certainly they probably are in most cases, but the only reason that we're targeting them, so to speak, is because they're no longer cooperating with our demands and our desires. If we're truly concerned about the freedom of individuals across the planet and across the world, we would have a radically different foreign policy, and we would be looking at a lot of different countries and trying to go about things in a very different manner. This whole shock and awe conquest of third world countries is strictly a financial, corporate, resource-based fucking policy.
Yep. Yeah. If we had a more benevolent foreign policy, you would see a lot more humanitarian efforts in these struggling, developing countries, rather than turning them into war zones and leveling them and blowing shit up and having a military presence, essentially to ensure American interests don't get disturbed or disrupted.
Yeah, well, like Iraq and Afghanistan, we just go over there, blow the shit out of their countries, and we bring in American companies to come and rebuild them.
Yep.
And that makes dollars for Americans.
Yeah, and that's one part of it. There's also the part where we put up these puppet governments in place of the current regime that we are there overthrowing.
Yeah.
That, like you said, is basically our bottom bitch.
Yeah. And then, somewhere down the line, we'll come into conflict with them. Then all of a sudden, they're oppressing their people. We got to go in there for freedom.
Uh-huh.
And they're going to attack us or some shit. But the reality is, they're so fucking destitute and live such abject lives that America, we could have total security. Just, we're surrounded by massive oceans on either side.
Yeah.
We only have a border with Mexico. Canada, isn't an issue.
We
really
have anti-nuclear.
Yeah, if we were concerned about being defensive rather than offensive, we wouldn't have a security issue.
Yeah.
But it's all these resources that we pump into making a presence in most of the world. It's bad karma. It's very bad karma.
Mm-hmm. It certainly is, and I'm not condoning any violence of any kind, whether it be from Americans or Middle East or whatever, and I'm not belittling what happened at 9/11. It's very sad and a terrible time for our country, but it is karma. We can't go over there and murder people and fuck everybody's shit up and attempt to control everything without expecting some kind of repercussion. That's why these things happen.
Yeah.
It's not because they hate our freedom and all this stuff. We are cast as the infidels by those people because of our actions, not because of our beliefs.
Yeah.
Or our way of life. They couldn't care less.
Alright, thanks for joining us again on the Eclectic Podcast. We're still looking for guests, so if you'd like to join us, have a conversation with us, just drop us a line. We'd love to have you, and again, thanks for joining us. And our own Jonathan here is going to play us a little outro, so take it away, John.
Thanks for joining us. We appreciate you.